Welcome to the Invest for More Real Estate Podcast. My name is Mark Ferguson, and I am your host. I'm a house flipper. I flip 10 to 15 houses a year. I own 13 rental properties with a goal to buy 100 by 2023. I'm also a real estate agent. I've been licensed since '01. I run a team of 9. We sell close to 200 houses a year. So on this show, we like to interview house flippers, landlords, and the best real estate agents in the business. So stay tuned for some great shows. If you want more information on my rentals, on the numbers, how I buy properties, check out InvestFourMore.com. Hey everyone, Mark Ferguson with Invest for More. Welcome to another episode of the Invest for More Real Estate Podcast. I've got a really cool guest on for this show, Cory Boatright with Real Estate Investing Profits and Phenomenal Results Coaching is with me. Cory's got his own podcast, been an extremely successful investor and done some really interesting things in his life. Cory, thank you so much for joining me. How are you today?
Phenomenal, man. Thanks for having me on here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Great to have you. I know you've had a really interesting journey. Sounds like you started over 40 companies. Only a couple were successful. Ultimately, that led you to real estate.
Right.
We were talking in a podcast that I did for you the other day, and you got started at a very young age in real estate. How did you first get involved in real estate?
Sure. So 21 years old when I got my first rental property, I kind of stumbled into it with one of my good friends, and it was a little duplex in Oklahoma City. And didn't know what I was doing, but we ended up moving in that place, fixing everything ourselves, which I thought was going to save me a lot of money. Just like when you and I were talking, how sometimes the logical things don't always come out most profitable in the end. And what happened was I fixed all those things myself, learned what I didn't want to do very, very quickly, but over 2 years lived in that place. So it saved money and then ended up flipping it for almost double what we paid for it. And that really was the first time I was like, wow, this is pretty interesting. However, at the time I was growing my e-commerce business, which was a high-end electronics, high-end AV electronics company. And we were just doing really well with that. So all my focus was, and I'm sorry if you can hear the background noise, but I'm here at Starbucks, or actually it's all about cha. I usually at Starbucks, but so basically, it's growing that business, and it was beginning to take off. You remember when plasma TVs were $15,000-$20,000, Mark?
Oh yeah,
they first came out, right? So that's when I got involved with that, when it was just right here, and so it's just cruising up. And now, of course, you can go and the same TV I used to sell for $15,000-$16,000. You can go down to the store now and buy for $500. I mean, it's pretty insane, but that's the nature of electronics. But anyway, so that happened. So I grew that business and I sold it before I was age of 25. And I got really excited from that because I knew I wanted to do something else. And I started to look around and notice that a lot of folks that I sold these plasma TVs to, I kept a list of all these clients and they were highly affluent. So obviously not everyone could afford something like that. And the ones that could, they were doing pretty well. And do you know, whenever I would talk to these folks, I'd ask them, what made you successful? What was it that gave you the ability to be able to get something like this? Because it was it was like a toy, right? And some of these guys were just stroking checks. And it was just really, at the time, my early 20s, I was just like, wow, this is very exciting to me. And I want to learn. I asked them a lot of questions, and some of them would take an hour on the phone and talk to me about stories. And I think about 95% of them all had a story with real estate.
Wow, that's awesome. And I want to get into that more. But first, I'm guessing that was one of the 2 companies that succeeded.
That's right.
You said you had started over 40 companies. What was your game plan when you were younger? Were you just trying different things to see what was successful, or how did you start 40 companies?
I know it sounds crazy, right? Well, I had a TNC video company with one of my good friends as well, which we actually sold VCR tapes to lawyers for deposition trials and whatnot. And they used to pay $120 for these things. And it was just because basically there's only a couple guys in town that would provide this service for them. So figured out a way to obviously get a VCR tape cheaper than $125. And we would go and make these recordings and did that for a little bit. I sold Wickers knives for a while. I sold Ginsu knives for a while. I got involved with several little MLM companies. I had my own, at one point I had my own car business. So it's called Boatright Auto Finders. I had a car lot. We had buy here, pay here loans. Yeah, I mean, the list can go on and on. It was most of these things I figured out I did not like to do them. And the real estate business and the drop ship business, which interesting, the high-end electronics business was a drop shipping business. And I just so happened to live in a town where the founder of a company called Petra Industries, he actually started this company, which was a drop shipping warehouse, if you will, for all these other companies. And he was going to the founder of the company that did $1 billion in business the second year that I recognized what he was doing. I looked at his numbers and he did $1 billion in business, and he lived in my city. And so he was going to my church. And so I actually had a chance to connect with him and work some deals out. And that business grew. And I grew that business and I sold that business. And from there, really started looking more heavily into real estate. And then from real estate, really that's the other business that has been successful. So the drop shipping business, which also had to do with internet, and I succeeded in that business because I was great at marketing. And the same guy could sell the same TV, right? And I would sell faster and more TVs than he would, because I realized what the market wanted. I would go online and find these places where people were hanging out to buy these high-end electronics. And it was places where they had NetJets ads on there. They had pictures of people with Rolexes. They had pictures of people with boats. They had pictures with, attractive women and men on these pictures, and having a lifestyle business. So it was all lifestyle. So when I posted different images in marketing, it was all about lifestyle. And then it was all about how fast that somebody wanted to have an answer to something, because these people are used to getting what they want. So I just catered to that, and it gave me the advantage. But from there, I went to in real estate. After I sold my business, I started looking at other different methodologies. I didn't know anything really about real estate besides the fact I stumbled across one when I was 21 years old. And so I really wanted to learn as fast as possible. And I went on eBay and I started to type in real estate investing, teach me real estate investing. I mean, I just went on eBay and started typing all this stuff about real estate investing. And I ended up getting course after course after course. I mean, all the Ron LeGrand courses, all the Carlton Sheets courses. Do you remember these? Remember that big round LeGrand 3, like yellow, blue, red? All that that he had, for wholesaling and for flipping houses. And he had one for doing fix and flips. And so what I would do is I had a strategy. So I would go through these courses, Mark, on eBay. Okay. I would go through and I mark them up. I'd put highlighter on them and I mark up and I put the notes in. I'd take all these bits and pieces out of these courses and I'd make my own kind of notebook of things that I thought was the most important. Then I would resell the course back on eBay. Okay. And sometimes I would get more money when I resold the course than whenever I bought it. So for 1 year and 1 day, 366 days, I did nothing in my car except listening to audiobooks for 1 full year, which is tough for me because I'm a musician and play guitar. And so when I got in my car, I wanted to listen to music. But for 1 full year, my discipline was don't do anything besides listen to audio. In fact, it was a joke when I had my friends when we say, whose car are we going to go into? Well, don't go into Cory's car because all you're going to hear is learning, right? They wouldn't hear it. So 1 full year I did that. But I went through and I learned tons of Brian Tracy books, Psychology of Selling, Dale Carnegie books, how to win and influence, how to win friends, influence people, tons of Tony Robbins stuff. I read the whole Bible. They had a whole Bible on audio. Just tons of self-development books and then tons of real estate books, Ron LeGrand courses, Carlton Sheets courses. Back in the day, there was these tons of teachers, and it really gave me, I think, a good foundation on the fact that, wow, I don't have to go to school to learn this. I thought I had to have a certification. I thought I had to have a degree to do this. I mean, I really did. And I know it sounds silly now, but I really thought that if I'm going to be dealing in real estate, to me, this is such a big deal. I put it up there right along with like law. If I'm going to be doing something like this, and I mean, I've really got to, but when I realized that most people that were doing real estate that were being successful at it were either fix and flippers or wholesalers. And I remember the day that I figured out that someone didn't need money to flip their own house. Do you remember that? Do you remember figuring out the fact that wholesaling really meant flipping paper, not houses?
Right.
You remember that? Remember we thought for a long time, I still thought wholesaling meant I was going to buy somebody's house and then flip it. But most of the time you're signing the contract. And so that gave me permission in a way to go, oh, well, if I don't need the money to go do this stuff, because I thought, okay, I have some money but I didn't really want to spend it all at one time. So I thought, well, if I don't need the money to do this, well, what do I need? Well, I need education. I need specialized education on how to do it. So that's what I did. I learned on how to do something and got out there and started hustling hard, and became a bird dog for a mentor of mine. And then from there, I realized that he was flipping properties. So I started to flip my own properties. And then from there, had a fix and flip business, which I was not able to learn how to succeed because I just didn't know how to keep contractors not drunk on Saturdays. Really. But
we all run into that problem.
Yeah, you run into it, right? So in my, the days I thought I was going to make 25, 30,000 on the flip here in Oklahoma, fix and flip, I'd end up making 15, which is still okay. But the whole point is when you're taking a deal down is to make double than what you would make on a wholesale deal. So I just started to focus more and more on other parts of real estate. And what really kind of set the trajectory was wholesaling. And that was in 2006, 2005, 6, 7. It was a good time to get involved in a little thing called short sales. And that's for me when I started to put all the focus on short sales. That's when everything took off for me, because I realized that you could actually make more money from a property that was over leveraged, no equity, than you could from one that had equity. When I realized that, and at that time, not very many people were doing it. I think Jeff Collar at the time was doing it, if you remember Jeff, but not too many people were really doing the short sale game. So I just started a loss mitigation company and took off. And that really, we did for about 4 years solid in the short sale game and focused heavily on that. Had a big loss mitigation company. We were discounting, on average, $500,000, $600,000 a month from banks. And we got up over $50 million total from whenever we completely ended. I'm not involved with short sales as much now because all the red tape that came out, as you probably know. And you're talking about doing BPOs. We had 50 short sales in the hopper at any given time, Mark. I mean, any given time we'd have 50 short sales in the pipeline. We were closing on average 2, sometimes 3 a week. I had BPO agents that were all around in Oklahoma. And sometimes when I couldn't get the BPO number, I would find out who that just came out to do the BPO for the bank. And I'd order another BPO from the same person that just went out and did the BPO. And he wouldn't even go back out the house. He would just send me the same one that he sent the bank. So that was one of the ways that I was able to get the number from the bank, which I knew when I had that number, where they're going to be. They're going to be around 80, 82, 83 cents on the dollar. And sometimes that BPO, as you know, could come in pretty low. And we did really well on short sales. And then, of course, all the new changes came out with FHA and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and we started new regulations and how long you had to hold the property. And then the big option came out. The option agreement with Jeff Watson was a big proponent in that when that first came out. I went through that whole deal. And then we started moving to doing land trust instead of doing purchase agreements. And went from land trust, went over to doing option agreements. And it just became, after a while, you're just trying to figure out a way to, as an investor, you'll figure out a way to get around something. But whenever the Fed started coming in and really trying to make an example of people, even if you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's, at the end of the day, whenever you went to closing and you signed off on something, you would say something along the lines of, you didn't already have this property resold, you didn't have a buyer already waiting for it, you weren't going to resell the property for at least 90 days. And it started getting more complicated. We started selling LLCs to get around it. We started to put stuff more in land trusts. But after a while, man, it just wasn't worth it. There's just easier ways to find a paycheck,
Right. And yeah, let me stop you there for a second. But for those who don't know, a short sale, basically the owner of the home, their loan is more than they can sell it for. So like if your house is $100,000, you might have a loan of $120,000, and you have to go to the bank, ask for basically permission to sell it for less than what the bank's owed, and the bank is taking a loss on those deals. So when you started your loss mitigation company, I've heard of different people using that term as far as they helped agents negotiate with banks, but it sounds like you were basically trying to negotiate short sales to purchase yourself. Is that right? And then wholesale?
We had both of it. We had an investor company that was putting offers in. And then my ex-wife at the time was also a real estate agent. And so we had a credited system for all the real estate agents that we got for a title company. So we do these classes, and we aren't really able to solicit, but we'd give out our cards and say, if you have a deal, you have a question about it. So everyone was calling us about these short sales because, no one knew about them. And the agents hated doing them because they took forever. So we said, don't worry about it. You don't have to worry about anything. We'll do all the loss mitigation for you, all this. So, that worked out really well. We got a lot of agents got credits for working with us that brought us deals. It worked out really, really well.
Yeah. And as an agent who's worked on short sales, I can see the value of using any company because, like you said, it can take 6 months to complete a short sale with some of the banks like Bank of America or some other ones. And you're sending them pages and pages and pages that usually had to be faxed at that time, which was crazy. And yeah, it was just a huge pain to get anything through. So yeah, no, very cool. And from what you said, as far as the new changing regulations, they pretty much made it impossible to wholesale short sales now because of all the regulations, and you can't resell it within a certain amount of days. Like you said, you don't know a buyer beforehand. There's a lot of red tape now on short sales.
Well, and it was to get the most, it's not impossible. People still do it now, mostly with cash buyers. But at the time, we were using retail buyers. Okay, so because when you use a retail buyer, you were making the most amount of money. And imagine you get a short sale for, let's say, $75,000, you got it resold for $130,000. It's a pretty good chunk of money, but that's a retail buyer. They're getting a loan, they're putting money up. So then you'd have to have the banks understand what was going on, and the lenders have to understand what's going on. And that was the regulations starting to get tighter and tighter, that was very, very difficult. And so then we started to just move to cash buyers, and that was a lot easier, definitely a lot easier. Anytime you're dealing with cash buyers, it's so much easier. There's just not nearly as much red tape. But back to what we're talking about short sale very quickly. You're right about the fax. When you fax things in, all the documents, it was sometimes these things were this thick, and it would take sometimes a week to get the paperwork. Plus, you're trying to get it from the homeowner. The homeowner has to give you all the authorizations, everything that you basically, a power of attorney, if you will, to some degree of everything and you just met this person, right? And you're trying to get all this information. So you have to really know what you're doing. You have to have negotiations down. You have to have your strategy down. And we had a pretty good team on how that worked. So the entrepreneurial side of me, of course, was thinking, how can I make this process? Anytime I see a process that's painful, I always get excited. One of my good mentors told me that whenever you have a headache, Cory, it sucks for you, but fantastic for Tylenol. So great advice, right? So he said, be Tylenol. So how can you be Tylenol? So I found a guy that started a software company. He actually had a great software. And we started to go and look and see what can we do to make a short sale package quicker. How can we get it automated, basically? So we, sure enough, started a software company that was called Short Sale Builder. If you remember, it got pretty big. We had almost 5,000 users. We charged $97 a month. It was a pretty big business. This is before RealFlow really came out, which I know Greg and Josh at the time are really good friends, and Short Sale Commander and all these other companies are coming out. But we were just right in there. And, we came out with this thing called the Short Sale Builder. And so you hit a button and it would build the whole packet, and it was automated. And all you had to do is fill in a couple of fields and it would automate it. And our packets were going to the top because when you're dealing with loss mitigators, they're making $10 an hour. they wanted to make it simple. So that's what we did. We found a way to make the package simple for them. We knew exactly what they needed in the order that they wanted it in, right? And so that's what we did. We created this short sale software and ran that business for 2 years. And so that was all a part of that whole short sale movement. And so that was another part of the whole short sale thing. And then I became a reluctant kind of information marketer for that business. I was doing these Denny's here in Oklahoma City. I was having a Denny's where people would come and for breakfast, and then people were asking me more questions. They said, let's do lunch. So we did lunch, and then we started doing dinners, and we started doing group dinners, and then we started putting on classes for the title company and everything. And we started doing this, and someone said, why don't you just create a course? This guy named Chris Chico connected with me one time because I was on a forum called Easy HUD back in the day. It's called Easy HUD. And I was answering everybody's questions on this forum. He said, dude, you are this guy that is an authority figure for the short sales on our forum. Do you want to be a moderator? And I said, yeah, I'll be a moderator. That's cool. So after I did that, he said, hey, I got a big list of people. Let's do this webinar thing, which at the time, I didn't even barely heard of a webinar. He's like, but you need to create a course and we'll split it. We'll create it and we'll sell it for $1,500 and we'll split the profits 50-50. And I was like, what, a course? Like, you mean like one of those guys on TV? Like literally, it's not something I really even was thinking of doing, but they started explaining the fact that you make a course one time, you could sell it forever and you could help a lot more people. And all these things I'm doing, I could just sell on my course. So I thought, okay, that makes sense. So created a course. And I think the first night we did our webinar, we sold like 150 courses on the webinar, which was for $1,500, man. It was like a game changer. It was the biggest aha thing in my life. I was like, wow. We just crushed it and people loved it and it was exciting. So from there, I was hooked. I was hooked from the internet and real estate fusion, right? I started to go to these different events, one called Virtual Investing Seminar. That's where I met Preston Ely. If you know Preston, I met Gary Boomershine. I met Sam Bell. I met Colin Egbert from realestateInvestor.com back in the day. I met all these other guys that you're seeing teach now. I think Dan Merrill was at that one. Chris Chico was at that one. Just tons of people that are kind of just getting started. And that's where I met some of those guys. And then we did a virtual investing seminar too, and just started to see more and more of real estate going online, more and more going online. So you had to figure out a way to get in front of those people. So yeah, that was a little bit of the story. It's kind of interesting thinking back about it now.
Very cool. So you've done obviously a tremendous amount of different businesses and your careers have evolved, or business have evolved in a interesting route, from wholesaling to short selling to coaching. Are you investing in real estate still now yourself? Yeah. What's your personal investing look like?
Sure. So I have a portfolio of properties right now. I had 60 at one point. It's down quite a bit less than that now. When I went through a divorce, that was not a good recommendation for keeping properties. So I still have a little portfolio of properties, which is cash flow is always great, especially if you have paid free and clear houses. Someone's always going to need a place to live. You're never going to go wrong investing in real estate. Someone's always going to need a place to live. Okay. So that's, I know you know this, better than anybody, but it's always a great investment. The challenge is that whenever I started getting involved with it, they were Bank of America and Chase, all these were allowing you to do 10 properties per spouse. So you could do, what I'm talking about. You could do 10 per spouse. So it was easy to just get a whole bunch of properties. And so what I would say is make sure that you think things through a little bit and don't buy properties on cash flow. Back in the day, it was really easy to get caught up that you're just going to get all this cash flow and these renters are going to pay for the rest of their lives. And that's true. You'll have a renter pay. That's true. But at the end of the day, you want to buy a property based on the value of that wholesale value of that property. If you are an investor, it is your responsibility to purchase that property at a price that is going to make sense to the person selling it to you, but it's also going to make sense to you that you don't want to buy anywhere near retail. Okay. As an investor, it's an absolute shame if you pay anything more than like 80% of a property. In fact, here in Oklahoma, we buy properties for 50, 60 cents on the dollar. I think it's a travesty as an investor if you're buying anything, near retail. It's your responsibility as an investor to, be a good negotiator, because negotiations go right along with being a good investor. If you're an investor and not a good negotiator, you're going to pay way too much money for property. So biggest advice that I could say about being an investor is learn negotiations. Learn negotiations, because you're going to be dealing with someone that has an issue with time. They need to get rid of a property quickly, and they have a reason. There's a motivation. So the better that you can get at defining and understanding which those motivations and what that time means to that person, and being a good listener and being Tylenol to whenever they have the headache, you're going to win. And sometimes, that means that you're buying properties at a price you're thinking, why would anybody ever sell me that? Well, think about in your life, if you've ever had something, it doesn't have to be a house, but you've had something and it was worth a lot of money, whether that's a $200 shirt, or $200 pair of jeans, or $500 pair of shoes, or $1,000 watch, or $3,000 watch, or whatever. And you just, for some reason, the value wasn't the emphasis at the time of you wanting to get rid of that thing, right? Maybe it was a bed, a couch, or something like that. You know what I'm talking about? So we all do it, right? And so we got to get very good at being a negotiator. And one thing I teach in our coaching program called How to Flip Contracts, Not Houses, is we talk about the 4 personality types, Mark. And I put an animal to them just so people can remember them. And it's worked really well by doing it. So we talk about the koala, the personality. We talk about the monkey personality. We talk about the owl personality and the shark personality. And if you are a koala, which basically you can just tell people what to do, that's a koala personality, but you can't be over aggressive because they get really freaked out about it. If you're the monkey and you're smiling, you're the type of person that wants to just make everybody feel good and smiling and telling jokes, and you're being, just kind of general about things, and you come in and you're the owl personality and you're very specific, saying, I'm going to give you $30,123.05 for your house, that's going to turn off the monkey, because they're not used to being that specific about things. They just want to smile and have a good time. The whole point of the monkey is to influence you, even if the very thing that they want to influence you wasn't the beginning thing that you started out with. So it's important to understand negotiations. It's the shark personality is going to be very overbearing. They're either going to have a dead fish handshake to you when you meet them, or they're going to be very aggressive. They're going to talk loud. What's the disadvantage about the shark? They're not good listeners. And they want you to get right to the point. So if you're a person that likes to tell a bunch of stories like the monkey does, shark is not going to deal with you. You're not going to get as best of a deal. So I think understanding personality types is one of the advantages that you can have on getting the best deal as an investor.
Yeah, no, that's great. And what you talk about with getting great deals on rentals, I always like to say it, buying below market value. You don't want to pay retail, even if you're cash flowing. Cash flow is great. I love to buy for cash flow. But if you can walk in with 20% equity, it's such a huge bonus. If you ever need to get out of that property or you want to build fast, it makes it so much easier than paying straight retail.
It so much does. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And with the personality thing, I think, like you say, so many people want to do their own thing, what's comfortable to them. But I liken it to, if someone wants to email you and you're calling them every day, it's not going to work. If someone wants to call you every day and you're scared to talk on the phone, you just want to email them, it's not going to work. It's the same type of thing, just figuring out what works best for that person, not what's best for you.
That's
makes
right.
things so much easier when negotiating and doing deals. So yeah, that's great advice.
And being genuinely interested in the person's situation. If they say, so what are you wanting to sell the house for? It's a nice house. Why do you want to get rid of this thing? Oh man, my grandma's sick and I've really got to get some money to help her out and I can't stay here. Don't just go, oh, that's okay. I'm sorry about that. Don't say, oh, your grandma's sick. What happened to her? And if the personality type, depending on if they're telling you that, and first off, the shark is going to be, he will get very quick to the point. Well, I got a few things going on in my life right now. Okay. Well, obviously he's not wanting you to engage in the story, but listen, be a good listener. If someone's telling you my grandma's sick and they start telling you details, she's down at this hospital and she's this many months away from living, or whatever story, man, hang out in that story for a little bit. Be genuinely interested and care about people. Sometimes we just look at people as numbers. I'm guilty of it too. It's whenever you start looking at business and people, they start to blend together. But people are people. They have feelings, they have emotions, they have desires and wants, they have fears, and they have objectives, things that they want to accomplish, goals they want to check. And they also have dislikes and likes, that they will either like you or dislike you very, very quickly. It has a lot to do with you understanding that personality type and how they are and making them feel comfortable. Fantastic book. And I know you read it. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. One of the very, very, very best books. Talks about mirroring and modeling. Very important to understand that. I want to go back to about the offers, because you mentioned this. I think it's important. We come up when we teach in our class called WMRP, Mark. And this is a very simple way, the very simplest way that I could come up with explaining how to make offers. So let's say you have a $100,000 house, okay? So we use WMRP. The $100,000 is the R value, the after repair value that we've all heard of before, okay? We call that worth. That's what the worth is, okay? And so the WMRP, so the worth. And then the M stands for the wholesale market. What is the market for wholesale? So for here in Oklahoma City, it's going to be 60, 70 cents on the dollar. So for this example, $100,000 house, now you've got that's the worth. Now you've got the market, the wholesale market is 70,000. So then next one is WMR, the repairs. So that's what R stands for. So how do you, if you're not a contractor, how do you come up with repairs? Well, what we use is $12.50 times the square footage. So for this example, let's just say it's 1,000 square foot home. Okay. So that's $12,500. So before I even look at the house, I know, unless it's just a complete absolute pit, we're going to use a number around $12.50 for the repairs. And then after that is our profit, the P, which that stands for profit. And we work in $10,000 on every single wholesale flip, right? So now you've got WMRP. So what do you think on a $100,000 property, how much money are you going to make an offer on that property, right? So if you have $100,000, then you got 70%, that's your mark, that's 70,000. Now you've got 12,500 because that's $12.50 times 1,000 square feet. So 70,000 minus 12,500 is what?
You're 57,500.
Then you minus 10,000 off that.
47,500.
That's where you're going to start. And let's say that you don't make $10,000 profit. Let's say you make 5. It's better to always start at 10. Because you can always, come down. I see people all the time going, oh, there's no way I'm going to make that. So they'll make an offer on a property with their profit in mind because they'll think I'm a good guy. I'm not going to, I'm only going to make about $5,000, $3,000 on that. Well, that's fine. But you want to start higher because you may get beaten up on that property. And it's your responsibility as a good negotiator to start a little higher. So that's what we do. We build it in. And I'm telling you, unless you're on the East Coast or West Coast, you want to use what your wholesale market is, maybe closer to 85, 90 cents on the dollar. But using that formula, and sometimes that instead of $12.50 mark on the East Coast, they'd use anywhere from, I think it's $17.50 to $20 a square foot. And obviously, if you're around La Jolla, it's a lot different. But you know what your wholesale market is. What are people paying for properties in your area? And then what's a general idea of what they're getting them repaired for? And you find that number out. And you can start making quite a few offers on properties sight unseen. And it's amazing how close you're going to be within a couple $1,000s by using that little formula.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned your coaching programs quite a bit.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know your stuff. I mean, you know your wholesaling, you know the flipping side of it. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you to start learning more about you? Is it your website or I know you have an awesome podcast as well.
I love for them to just go like you're on your podcast. I love that people come to the podcast and just listen to some of the interviews. And if they're interested from there, because obviously just like you, we have to be a good fit, right? That the coaching's an application based only. Maybe you don't like me and that's okay, but maybe you do. Maybe we will get into a good program where we can learn together. And so we have different programs available, but go to the podcast first. And then once you're there, if you're at realestateinvestingprofits.com, go ahead and sign up, get on our list. And then you'll see a little link at the top for coaching. And that will explain more about our different programs. I don't want to spend all the time here talking about the programs, but we we got really successful students. I really focus on making you get to your first deal, first flip as soon as possible. And usually that's going to be about a $7,500 to a $10,000 payday. And then from there, then you can look at other things you want to do. It's amazing to me how many people talk about doing commercial deals and short sale deals and fix and flips and all these other things. And Mark, they've never done their first flip.
Right. It's called focus, right? Focus on one thing first.
Because there's so many things out there, So, but imagine the confidence that you get that when you get that first payday and all of a sudden everybody is telling you that it couldn't work. You've now proven them wrong. But what's more importantly, you've proven yourself that it works. And right. I'm telling you, the confidence that you get whenever you see that wire or you go to the title company, you get that check, the confidence that you get from that moment. I always tell my students to frame their first check. And sometimes it might be $3,500. It might be $1,500, but it might be a whopping, $15,000, $20,000, depending on where you are. A guy in San Diego right now does a $42,000 flip, $42,000 wholesale flip. Okay, where he put a piece of paper and flipped it. It's amazing.
Nice. All right. One last thing before we get going here. I know you've got to go and I've got to go here pretty soon. What's one piece of advice for people who haven't started investing in real estate? They want to get started. What's something they can do to take action right away? I always tell people, you've got to take action at some point. You can educate yourself all you want, but right. Really to get the ball rolling, you've got to take, some action. What do you think is something someone can do to really get started?
Sure. So obviously, whenever I talk to different folks about why they haven't done their first flip yet, the number one reason is fear. And you can say it in all these other different ways, but it comes down to they were unsure or they're fearful of some particular method, right? And, here's the thing about fear. I look at fear like a balloon. Okay, so the more air you put in fear, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And the funny thing is, even though there's just air in that thing, it looks massive. And here's the other thing. When you step away from fear, which is what most people do because they don't want to deal with it, and it's kind of guarding what they want on the other side of it. As on the other side of fear is everything that you want, but it's guarding you, right? So as you step away from it, fear gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But as you step into it, it gets smaller. So the first mindset tweak is step into fear and it gets smaller, not stepping away. The other thing is, remember on Ghostbusters, whenever remember Slimer?
Yes.
Remember that thing that was just guarding that door, and Dan Aykroyd and the other guy was sitting there with their Ghostbuster guns, and it was coming at them and they were freaking out, right? And that thing is coming at you and it looks mean and scary. And then it hits them, and what happens? Did they die?
Nope, they got a little dirty.
They got slimed. Remember that? They got slimed. I got slimed, right? That's the worst thing that's going to happen to you, is that you're going to get slimed, meaning that people are going to say stuff about you that may hurt your feelings, okay? You have to get over that. As an investor, you have to have some thick skin, because if it was easy, everybody would be doing it, okay? So you're walking into your fear. Don't worry about getting slimed, because on the other side of that is everything you've ever wanted. Fear is guarding the door to your dreams, your ambitions, everything that you ever want. And I know it sounds motivational, but it is actually psychologically the truth. Read this book called My Happy Chemicals. Okay, and it talks about the way that our brain responds to cortisol and the way our brain responds to certain fears of our lives. We're either usually living in the past or the future. We're usually not living in the present, because something in the past has scared us, or something we're scared of what can happen in the future, right? So my biggest kind of thing to get across here is step into fear. And the worst thing can happen is you get slimed. But the best thing that can happen is that you'll get over it, you'll overcome it, and on the other side of it is everything you've ever wanted in life.
That's awesome. And I think people always imagine the worst case scenario, it could happen. They always think, what's the worst possible thing, thinking about it, instead of what is the best thing, or, the positive that could happen from it. If you just change your whole mindset about how you look at things, it changes things big time.
Absolutely.
So, great advice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Cory, for being on the show. Really appreciated it. Again, realestateinvestingprofits.com. That's your site.
Yes.
Phenomenal podcast as well.
Thank you, man.
And yeah, I'll do a write-up with this, have all your contact information for people that want to get a hold of you. And yeah,
Great.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks. I appreciate it, man. Sorry about the background noise.
Oh, no worries. No worries. All right. Take care.
See you, Mark.
All right, bye.